That's a new feature I haven't touched before. Tip of the day, my friend. Whatever little tricks here to make
Well,
Zoom
we got
more
to save our
efficient.
Dropbox files, right? Or Google Drives, man. Those things get bogged down. They're always yelling at me. You're past your 100 gigs. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. So,
Killing me here. Yeah. Sweet. All right. I am recording. Any questions here before I do a countdown?
no, sir.
All right. Here we go. And 3, 2, 1. Brett, welcome to the show.
Sean, thanks for having me.
Hey, glad to have you on. I'm excited to hear your story. So if you would, go ahead, kick us off. Give us your career backstory.
Absolutely. So my career backstory starts out when I'm in college, and I'm playing college hoops. I'm on academic and athletic scholarship at a small private school in Northern California. My days were spent like a single, let's say bachelor college student, not a worry in the world, right? You're playing basketball, hanging out with friends, in the dorm rooms. The game of choice at that point was Halo 2, and we would
Mm-hmm.
battle and we'd have a lot of fun. And I was studying business, and I was studying Bible and theology, and I was studying at a minor in counseling psychology. So I was getting a well-rounded education, and took an internship at a company called Marcus and Millichap. You see, my cousin was a mentor, kind of like an older brother figure. And he goes, Brett, I think you'd be a good fit here. You should take a peek at it. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I grew up in the real estate business with my father and mom owning rentals, or they owned the rentals, and then when my dad would build houses. And so this is in like the Bay
Sure.
Area, call it the MC Hammer, days. My brother and I would
Mm-hmm.
drive the Bobcat, we'd hammer the nail, we'd move the bricks. We learned how to work hard and what it meant to potentially be an entrepreneur and own your own business. But at the same time, my family, my mom and dad were very successful, but then they got divorced, and we went from like a lot of wealth to like no wealth overnight. You see, let's just say my dad had the wealth, my mom didn't, and we lived 90% of the time with my mom, and he didn't really pay child support. Let's just put it that way. So it was tough, right? So I saw both
Yeah.
sides of like the silver spoon and kind of like the scarcity mentality. So we kind of battled that my whole life, but I knew I wanted to make financial success because I wanted to have margin with my family. So here I'm at college. I'm going to this big commercial real estate firm, and that's what Marcus and Millichap is. It's like a Morgan Stanley of the investment real
Sure.
estate world. So they're teaching me how to underwrite properties, how to sell, how to present, how to speak, how to cold call, how to negotiate. And these are
Yep.
like multi-million-dollar deals. So like, oh my gosh, I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm learning, and I'm growing. And just when I started to get some momentum in business, and by the way, it's 100% sink or swim. Like there's no salary, no benefits. It's this
Right.
competitive, cutthroat type of an environment that I've ever been in. Part of that I love because I was an athlete growing up. So I
Yep.
love that competition and that ability to have a ceiling. So I'm growing, I'm learning. It's all really good. And then something happens, the 2008 crash, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
went from making a little bit of money to like next to nothing overnight. And it was a place where financially, obviously, it was tough, but it was like, brutal for me, like emotionally, because I was used to success, right? I was used to succeeding in sports,
Yep.
football, basketball in high school, and then basketball in college, and academics and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, for the first time, I found myself, oh my gosh. And not only was I not succeeding financially, but it also felt like I wasn't succeeding because I was newly married and a baby at home. So all of a sudden, the flashbacks of like, oh my gosh, my dad, my mom, finances, divorce,
Right.
like all of this starts kind of coming back. And I remember sitting in my mentor's office, and it's like a random Thursday at like noon. Another deal just fell apart. Another potential big check that was going to just change everything for my wife and I. And it fell apart. And so I'm in my mentor's office, and I just start like bawling, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't cry, but I just uncontrollably just started all coming out. And I'm going, okay, what am I going to do here? All right, so baby at home, wife at home. So I go to my wife and I'm like, look, in order for us to keep this going, because I'm growing and learning a ton from these amazing mentors, but at the same time, we can't afford this. Like we're going into debt, we're running out of
Right.
money, student loans are piling up. Like we need to do something here. And she's like, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, here's my vision. I think if I can stick this thing out, we're going to make it, and we're going to make it big. But in the meantime, we got to just like honey badger, cut expenses, figure it out. Well, what does that mean? Well, I called my brother, and if you're open to it, we can move into him with a small condo. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, but the baby's on the way. I know, but So it was this circumstance where she says yes, and she supports me, and she believed me, and that's just really the biggest thing here for me in my career journey, that she believed and she saw a vision and for our future, even during like the darkest times financially. So okay, so what did I do? On second thing, I get a side job. So I go, look, this is what I'm committing
Good
to
for
do.
you.
Not only are we going to move in and do this thing, but to keep the lights on, we were at Cheesecake Factory on a random Saturday, and they're serving these $12 egg rolls, and they're like this $8 cheesecake. And I'm like, man, this stuff's amazing. And I'm like, what if I start working here nights and weekends? Because might be my only shot here. So I got my ego out of the way. And I think the first lesson that I learned in my career is that I didn't let my ego get in the way. Right. And one of the questions that I was on a podcast yesterday, I think I didn't know I was asking myself this, but this is really what was going through my head. Is my pride worth more than achieving financial freedom? Is my pride worth more than achieving the time and energy with my family, right? With my kids, with having enough margin so that we don't have to feel stressed to potentially do the disaster of what happened with my parents with the divorce. So that's what I did. Now, the manager at the time, he sat there and he goes, Brett, why am I going to hire you? You're ultra successful. I go, look, but no, I'm not financially because I'm burning up. He goes, but if you close a deal for $50,000 in 2 months, you're going to walk away. I go, I won't walk away. What do you want? He goes, I want 2 years. I go, 2 years? He goes, yeah. So you give me 2 years here. No matter what happens, I will hire you right now. I said, you got it. I'm in. 2 years. No matter what happens, if I make $1 million or no bucks, I'll be here. He said, okay. So he hired me, and that began the journey of 60 to 70-hour weeks. By day, I'd make cold calls. I'd get there about 7 a.m., prepare my day, make cold calls all the way to about 4 or 5. Yep. And then like Superman, I'd change out of my suit and tie suit, and I get in my cheesecake suit. Although I got to wear the same tie, which was kind of cool, right? So I didn't have to tie it twice because you had to wear a tie at Cheesecake, right? So I wore the cheesecake tie, and I served cheesecake. Now, and served and grew a lot, by the way, and learned a lot, and learned about sales and communication and
Totally.
Cheesecake Factory is an amazing company, right? But it wasn't my career path of choice, or at least what I thought it was. So did that for 2 years. Now, during that time, my manager, one of my mentors at Marcus & Millichap, brings in a gentleman. This gentleman, his name is Robert, and Robert starts teaching me about a thing called a Deferred Sales Trust. You see, Robert was a financial advisor, and he became the guide in my story for my career that changed everything. So I'm sitting in this room, another random Thursday in the middle of just 60-hour grueling weeks, living with my brother, pride completely gone, right? Like at one point, I'm at Cheesecake Factory and someone's in the other room. It's a client that I've been cold calling, trying to sell his $3 or $4 million deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right there. If he sees me, and there's no way I'm winning the listing. Like I had to switch with the other server to go to serve that person. Like, by the way, I'm still embarrassed at this point. Like I want to say at this point, I'm not telling anybody. Like my manager at Marcus Millichap doesn't know. My agents don't know. Like as much as I'm like the little guy in the shell, just walking into Cheesecake, hoping that nobody sees me, like my hood on, right? And then coming out, running to my car. Like it's not like I'm humble really at that point in the sense of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna brace this. Like I got this. No, I'm like embarrassed, right? I'm like scared. Right. But I'm going. There's a better future if I can just continue to learn, continue to grow. So I know I'm being long-winded here, but I'll get to the point here. So
I love it.
Manager comes in, Robert comes in, teaches us Deferred Sales Trust. I start to use this strategy. I start to call people, I start to talk about it. And we'll talk about what this whole thing is later on. But this one tool, this one strategy started to transform the way I grew my real estate business. And all of a sudden, I started getting more listings, more opportunities, more meetings. I'm in front of people that otherwise I wouldn't have been in front of as a young broker. Fast forward, my wife and I have 5 kids now. I am happy to say that I fulfilled my commitment. 2 years and 1 day, I retired from the Cheesecake Factory. And I was able to, my wife and I have 5 kids, and we live here in Sacramento. She's been able to stay home full time with our kids, and we have a thriving marriage, and it's all part of the story here.
I love it. There's so many lessons to learn there. The big one is overcoming your pride. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, their attitude is I refuse to work for somebody. It's like one of those things, you're not thinking about things logically. You need cash flow, right? Like you to pay for a mortgage or rent or whatever, your bills, health insurance, food. And you did the absolute necessary. And I've been there too. I've worked jobs I don't like. And it's just, that's it. It's just being a responsible human. At the end of the day, that's it. So you make this transition. I really want to learn this capital gains tax strategy, the product you got into. Let's talk about what is like the aha moment. What did you land on? This is what I got to be selling. What did you can you tell us about this journey? I can't wait to hear this.
Yes. So remember when I was going through this struggle between basically '08 and '11, right? This big
Yeah.
struggle of financial stress and all that stuff. My clients were too, right? Theirs is a little different. They were multimillionaires before, and they were doing really well, but all of a sudden they found that half of their wealth was gone, or sometimes all of it was gone. Like they're losing everything that they built up for 10, 20, 30 years. And the reason we could identify is they had too much debt, not enough liquidity, right? And not enough diversification. And they were overpaying for properties, and they knew they were doing it in the '05, '06, '07 market
Right.
before the crash. And they were using something called the 1031 exchange. And the 1031 exchange, for the listeners listening to this who may not know, it's just a way to sell an investment real estate and buy another one, all tax deferred. Simple
Yep.
answer, right? However, there's a few restrictions on this thing, and we call this the blockbuster transactional way of doing business. And that you have 45 days to identify a property from the time you close your first property, and then 180 days total to close on that said property or properties, right? Which creates this crunch of time and pressure, right? And we call this the shotgun wedding. You get engaged in 45 days, get married in 180, and you're like, wait, what? So we found, what we assessed with everybody, and everyone I would talk to, they all hated the 1031. They're like, they love to be sellers when they had a 1031 buyer, but they hated to be buyers. It's the same story. And we found that they had overpaid. They had paid too much tax. Or people, even before the crash, some of them just paid all the tax. They just sold everything and just took, by the way, what is it? It's 30 to 50% in capital gains tax and liability. Now, Biden is proposing to maybe double that on federal 20 to 40. So it could be somewhere between 50 and 70% of your gain, depending on what state you live in. So the stakes have never been higher, by the way. We can talk about that here and more in a minute. But that's what we found was the main culprit. If they just had sold high, paid off debt, and diversified, if they just had done that, they would have been in great shape. If you add tax deferral to this, oh my gosh, it's transformational. So Brett, you're telling me you could sell high, defer the tax, pay off debt, get liquidity, diversify into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, multiple commercial real estate deals of your own or with partners, hard money lending? The answer is yes. So we sat there like most people going, this is too good to be true. But if it's the Netflix a way of doing things, the Blockbuster is going to go out of business. Like this is going to be gone forever. But most people thought, no, we like our videos. We like the way we're doing things. We got this figured out. It's kind of like the old way of thinking. You see real estate, commercial real estate especially, it's like a religion, Sean, right? And people have certain doctrines. And one of those doctrines is 1031, swap until you drop, right?
Yep.
1031, delay, get the stepped up basis. But what if the stepped up basis goes away? What if the 1031 gets limited, right? What if capital gains tax doubles and you run out of time and you can't find a deal? So again, we saw this from the past, back 11 years ago, but market was down, market was depressed, and a lot of people said too good to be true, or let me think about it, or you should have called me 3-4 years ago, right? But I just kept believing that Netflix would be the future. Fast forward, there's been billions of under management now, thousands of closes, over a dozen no-change IRS audits, and we've never been busier because it truly provides the transformational exit plan that people are looking for.
So can you unpack this? Is this a product? Is this a service people are using? Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's a bit of both, right? Because it's not like just setting up an LLC where you can hire any kind of attorney. It's actually one particular law firm, that's my business partners, who created this. And they're brilliant, and it's proprietary, it's protected. They're the same ones who have defended it against the IRS for their actual clients, right, over the years, and had a perfect track record, by the way, with the IRS. They have a private letter ruling. They provide lifetime audit defense, so they stand behind their work. And they also work on a conditional basis, which means if you don't want to do the deal, just go ahead and you can pay your tax or go do a different deal. So we really try to take the pressure off of it. So in that sense, it's a product, but it's also a service in that it takes a group of business professionals to execute the strategy. And I liken it to like a surgeon versus a general practitioner. So the biggest objection we get is, this sounds so good, Brett, but why hasn't my CPA heard about it? Or why haven't they done it? Well, your CPA or your professional, they're really smart, but they're more like a general practitioner. You show up, Sean, for your maybe your annual physical and your annual flu shot, and they take your blood and they kind of do some common things. But guess what? You're playing basketball on a Saturday and you blow out your ACL. Well, you walk into that general practitioner's office and he's going to say, "Oh, you got a knee thing. It's kind of swollen, but I've never done the surgery, and imagine ACL surgeries weren't around, weren't invented, right? I just wouldn't recommend you have someone cut your knee open and do that thing, right? Well, that's like the deferred sales trust. Some people have never heard of it, don't know about it, and so they think it's too good to be true. Like it can't work because what you're promising or what you're sharing with me just provides too much transformation. So sometimes we have to hold back and just be like, yeah, I'll just defer some capital gains tax, but it also can defer income tax. It can also move funds outside the taxable estate. It works for cryptocurrency, primary homes. It works for businesses, investment real estate. It can save a failed 1031 exchange. So in all that sense, it's like a product, but the service is the actual execution. So I'm a third-party unrelated trustee. I'm like the offensive coordinator putting all the people together. So we've got to follow certain rules, right? And if we don't follow those rules, it falls apart. Not unlike a 401k or an IRA, right? These tax things that people know, but there's thousands of companies offering it. So it's like a household name. The Deferred Sales Trust, one law firm, a handful of trustees like me. There are lots of financial advisors that offer it. We do have a lot of strategic alliances, but a lot of those guys, they're not able to advertise because of the restrictions. So you just don't know about it as much. So hopefully that answers the question.
So let's get into the numbers a little bit. I love the benchmark you laid out with the 1031. You have 45 days to, is it qualify a deal or find a deal, and then 180 days to close it. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. With this deferred trust, what are the numbers there?
There are no timing restrictions. So you know how
Really?
Blockbuster, you guys show up on a Friday night and that movie may or may not be there, but even if you got that movie, you have 3 days to return it, right? And if you didn't rewind it, you got the fee. So that's like the transaction old way of doing it. That's the 1031, right? Sell high, buy higher 180 days later. Our parents taught us, Sean, to sell high and buy low, right? They didn't teach us to sell high, buy higher in a low inventory market where everyone's competing, where offers and prices are going through the roof, where it's just a frenzy, right? It's really nonsense. It's foolish, right? If you're considering buying real estate right now, be very cautious because you can really get hurt. This is my point of where this thing started. People overpaid. Remember, this happened before in 05 and 06. Okay. So enter the deferred sales trust. Sell high. We just did a house sale in Palo Alto for $8.3 million. It's a primary home sale.
Okay.
He literally could not have sold his house without the deferred sales trust. By the way, the 1031 doesn't even apply to a primary home. Right? It's a blockbuster. Right. It only applies to investment real estate. The deferred sales trust applies to any asset. We're doing a $5 million cryptocurrency case right now. This gentleman and his wife, a couple, bought Ethereum for about $100,000, and it's now worth $12 million. Okay. They work 60 to 70-hour weeks. They're going to sell this first group about $5 million, and they could literally just walk away and retire. Put it into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, investment real estate at any time, right? There's no timing restrictions. That's why we're like Netflix. Okay.
Right on. Yep. I follow.
Answer the question. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking these questions, I've got a lot of technical people on this audience, and I've got a lot of investors, a lot of self-directed investors. So a few of them are probably thinking right now, Sean, answer these questions for me.
That's a great question.
Right. So let's say you get somebody who, I like this home example. You sell a home, and let's say you're at retirement age, and the $8 million home example is a perfect example. You sell your home, you want to downsize, you've got all this cash on hand. Where does it go technically? Is it going into some kind of brokerage account or into a bank, or what happens to it?
Yeah, so a couple places. First of all, it goes to a third-party bank that has all the protections. The funds don't move without your signature. It's a $16 billion bank. Use one out of Southern California. It's the first place. The second place typically it goes to is like TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, with Robert, who's one of my business partners, to manage the money. Okay. Yep. Or I work with other financial advisors too. So if you're looking at it, you want to learn, you can come talk to me and we can get you going as well. And now it's an allocation presented based upon your risk tolerance. So we're not just guessing or throwing darts. We're actually having the client, and if they're married, fill out a risk tolerance questionnaire. It's a 2-page questionnaire. Based upon that, they get a score is determined. Based upon that, an allocation is presented.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the deferred sales trust, let's just give that example of the $8 million deal. In his scenario, he had about $6 million of debt. He had about $800,000 of tax. Okay. And so he put the remaining into the trust, including the tax deferral, fill out the risk tolerance questionnaire with the promise back to pay him about 8% of the initial amount plus 8% over a 10-year term. So he's becoming the lender. So the first thing to understand is you've become the lender to the trust. And so instead of taking all the cash, kind of like when you put into an IRA or 401k,
correct.
Although you own that account, you're delaying the income or delaying the principal until you receive it, and then you'll pay the tax. So that's what we're doing here. Okay. And then it can go to stocks, bonds, mutual funds on your approval, right? And then it can go into investment real estate, which is actually my favorite. It can be passive or active, which is one of the best kept secrets of the Deferred Sales Trust. A lot of people, if they read about this online, they're thinking, oh, I'm just giving up all control to this financial advisor in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Not that exciting. As an entrepreneur or a real estate person, no, you can go into your own deals. In fact, we just had a client, he closed a $2.6 million business in Alabama. And he going from like a marketing business, he wanted to start a new business, which was developing multifamily ground up. So he sold for 2.6. The challenge was he had $600,000 of tax. The solution was the Deferred Sales Trust because we deferred all of that. But then he started an LLC, and in partnership with the trust, he's building 70 units in Tennessee. And then what is he going to do? He's going to sell that and roll it all back into the trust. So it can go into passive deals. We also work with a group called Ashcroft Capital and Praxis Capital, and a group called Sunrise Capital. They do mobile home park, multifamily, and hard money lending. And these are, multi-billion-dollar companies, right, that have had experience for 10, 20, 30 years that are specialists in value-add real estate. Guess what? We can put some funds over there with some really, really respected people. And but the key is diversification, right? We're not putting it all with one group or all in one stock or all in one, one thing.
Sure.
We're diversifying that equity. Therefore, we're lowering the risk. But it's all based upon if it's your deal, Sean, you have to approve every deal.
So the deferred tax, I want to focus on that right now. So you're not going to pay any taxes now, but let's just use cap gains tax long term today. Isn't it like 15%? Is that correct?
It depends on what income bracket you're in, but most of the time it's 20% federal.
Right.
And like California's like 13.3%. And then you have Obamacare of 3.8%. So in California, if it's an investment property, minimum is 37%. Then you have depreciation recapture, which can bring it up to 40, 45, 50%. And so what Biden is proposing, the administration, is to take the federal from 20 to about 39.6. Okay. Where most people get this confused, Sean, is they go, well, I'm only in the 15% bracket. It's like I'm only making like $100,000 a year or whatever, right? But they don't realize when they're selling that $1 million property or that $3 million business that all of a sudden, guess what? You're in a new tax bracket this year. Right. Even though you may be
I was thinking long-term cap gains, not your income tax.
No, I'm talking long-term cap gains. These are all long-term numbers here. Held it for more than 1 year. These are all long-term, right? Once you actually unpeel the onion, you see how much it really is. So it's substantial.
Right. So you're deferring this tax. You're not paying it now. What happens later? Do you have a timeline when you have to pay it?
Most of our our clients like to pay the tax the second day to never. Okay, which means they're going to keep the full principal intact and they're going to live off the interest. Now, those interest payments, will pay ordinary income tax on that. So this is not tax avoidance, it's tax deferral. Again, think of a 401k or an IRA or a 1031.
Right.
When do you pay the tax on that? Well, when you actually receive the income.
Of course.
So the government gives these, what we call these macro tax strategies to help get the greater economy working well. It's a study of macroeconomics, which states if we can get the money flowing, get that person to sell that $8 million worth of cryptocurrency, which is not necessarily doing anything for the economy, and get them to infuse all of that tax deferred. They would have paid 3, but instead they move all 8 in there: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, developing real estate, investments. You're going to create more jobs, therefore more tax revenue, therefore everybody wins, right? So that's the idea, right? As long as it's business purpose, the money is invested into businesses or real estate, right? That's going to be great, the greater good for the economy and for the U.S. government tax-wise. That's really the key. Does that make sense, Sean?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is, taxes, it always finds a way, and always isn't the best word, but there's always a way it's going to come back to you. So with this, you can keep buying, selling. Let's say it's a real estate property. Let's say it's stocks. You take those gains and keep deferring them. It's kind of like rolling out over and over is what I'm visualizing. So you're essentially not paying the taxes.
Yeah, let's give you the rule of 72 to help you really break down these numbers. Okay, first of all, our minimum size deal is $1 million net proceeds and at least $1 million gain. So this is not for small deals. That's the first thing to understand. Why? Because our fees eat up the savings or the deferral. Therefore, a lot of times the ROI is not there, or at least the gain is, the tax liability is not painful enough. It's not big enough to really warrant doing the deal. So that's the first thing. So if you're listening to this, who is this for? LLC, S Corp, individual, right? Family trust, any asset of any kind subject to at least $1 million of net gain and $1 million net proceeds. Now, if you say, well, Brad, I have 2 houses at 500, yeah, we can do 2 deals that equal that. That's fine. Because in fact, you can have one trust, and you can roll in multiple assets into one trust. Okay. Now let's talk about the math behind it. The rule of 72, which states, if I can earn 7% net of all recurring fees over any 10-year period of time and let that 7% compound, guess what? My amount doubles. So let's just use a deal we just closed in Colorado. It was a $5 million apartment complex sale. Okay. They were to have paid about $2 million of tax. So they could not use us and pay and get, $3 million net proceeds, or use us and get $5 million minus some of the fees. Okay. So that's a pretty substantial difference, right? So in their scenario, they don't need or want any income. So they're actually delaying it for 4 years, which is giving them some income tax deferral. But the other thing is they have an 8% compounding interest rate is the goal, not a promise, but we're going to go try to make those investments work.
Yep.
Well, imagine they take none of that money for 10 years. In fact, at about 9 years, the rule of 72 doubles that 5 to 10. So now what's the government charging on that $2 million? Because it's still owed to the government. It's just not triggered yet. 0%. So when does that client want to pay back a 0% loan of $2 million to the government? Never.
Never.
Right. So they're going to live off the interest. At 4 years, they're going to start kicking some interest out. Guess what? It's still an extra $2 million working for you, right? So that's the transformation that we provide. People can not only retire earlier, because there's another deal. There's a veterinarian I'm working with. He came from India. Started with nothing. Started a practice at 0. The practice is worth about $5 million. And he goes, Brett, what you're telling me is I can sell today, defer about $2 million of tax, and retire what would have taken me to get to $7 million, which I may or may not even get there. He lives in Stockton, one of the hardest hit cities in America in the downturn. He's like, oh my gosh, like this is transformational. I have these young kids. I can retire now. Yeah, that's exactly what you could do. He's like, wow. So that's the difference here, right? It's time value of money.
Here's a scenario. Let's say you were to sell, you had a business and you sell it, because I do know people are getting to a certain age where they're like, they have an opportunity here to sell the business and just retire. And they want to defer that money. They put it all into a bank account. They defer their taxes. And let's say they don't reinvest it. How long do they have to start paying the taxes then?
So if and when they receive payments from the trust or principal from the trust. So if they've never received payments or principal from the trust, then there's no tax, because you can't pay tax on 0 or 0. Or in other words, people say, well, what if the investments go to 0? Well, if they go to 0, what do you owe? How much do you pay on 0 and 0? 0. So now we don't structure our deals where it's, no payments for 10 years and there's, it's all just, we don't do that. So again, we don't want it to be tax avoidance. So we do have some payments coming out. A lot of our clients will structure it with, 5 or 6%, somewhere within the first 2 to 4 years, depending on their income needs and their, what's going on. Right. So we do want to get that income flowing, report that as a 1099 INT to their CPA and show that this is truly a legitimate installment sale. It's not just kicking the can and breaking the system, if that makes sense.
Exactly. So just to, I'm going to oversimplify this, but you're working with clients that obviously, number one, they want to defer their tax, and 2, they're trusting you to put it into a strategy that you can leverage more money for compound interest up front. Because of course, let's say compounding 2 million isn't nearly as effective as a compounding 8 million. You can build your wealth much faster. You've got that money right up front.
Yeah, exactly. It's a simple rule of 72 mathematical equation. And again, 9 out of 10 wealthy clients that come to us, they don't need or want millions of dollars immediately just to pay a bunch of tax on it. They're like, can I structure it over 10 years on a $10 million deal and get $1 million every year for 10 years? Yeah, you can do principal and interest, right? No problem. Can we adjust it along the way? Yeah, you can adjust it along the way, right? You can turn the spigot on, turn the spigot off, right? We have a client we're working with today. He's married, got 2 young kids, and he's making 200, 400, 600,000. and he's doing a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. Well, I told him, like, what if you like just took a couple of years off and travel with your kids and your income went to zero, but in the meantime, you'd sold those businesses
Right.
and you turned on the trust money to get your lifestyle, right? And then right when you go back to work, you turn that thing back off and start working again. So it's flexible is what I really want you to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I see this really effective for, you see big windfall events. You're close to the valley. People, they build a tech business, they sell it. There's this huge amount of cash. What do you do with it? I see that as a great
Yeah, we call it the
target
go fund
customer.
yourself, right? You heard of GoFundMe, Sean? GoFundMe, you
Right.
go out there and you just put it online. You're like, hey, friends, family, everybody come fund me because either the bank won't fund me or I just need more
Mhm.
funds to get going here, right? Well, instead of getting the bank to fund you or venture capitalists to fund you or your friends and family, if you had sold an asset, you can, in partnership with the trust, it can fund your next business venture. So yeah, I think it's an amazing thing for Silicon Valley, tech entrepreneurs,
Yep.
people who are starting that next real estate business deal, who don't want to rely on a bank, right? Or don't want to
Exactly.
rely on friends and family or venture capitalists, right? Who don't want to have to make a partnership deal. They go, look, let me just partner with the trust that owes me the money anyways, and let's go build this thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah. And I also see it for people who inherit a large sum of money. What do you do with it in that case? Um, the retirement age comes to mind. Of course, even retiring early, I'm sure you get a lot of those. Like you just described somebody, you have the option. Why not? Right. Um,
Yeah, at the end of the day, we want transformation for the client. That means different things for different people. Some people,
Yep.
it's never working again. Some people, it's starting that business stream they've always wanted to start.
Mhm.
Like we're working with he's a plumber. He's on a very fixed income in Utah, and he hit it rich with crypto.
Mm.
And you wouldn't know it from the outside, but the crypto is about $10 million. But he's making about a 70,000 for his whole family a year on income. Well, he's going to sell, and it's going to change his life.
Yep.
He A, never has to work again, but B, can give to charity if he wants to, right?
Mhm.
He didn't have to with our strategy. And go start his other business, go start his own plumbing business versus working for somebody. I mean, there's just so many things
Of course.
that each client has that the deferred sales trust unlocks. And again, that's why we're like the Netflix versus the Blockbuster.
Right. Right. Let's talk about your business model real quick. I assume you're structured similar to like a venture capital firm or a hedge fund. Are you taking about a 2% AUM?
Yeah, it's a fair number. It depends on the size of the deal. It could be 1.5% to 2% depending on the AUM and what's under management, right? So let's
Sure.
talk about the fees. So there's a one-time fee to the tax law firm that provides lifetime audit defense, and that's about 1.5% on the gross sales price. So let's just use $1 million to be simple here.
Yep.
At $1 million sale, they take 15 grand.
Mhm.
Okay. Lifetime audit defense, very important. Perfect track record, state and federal. Like an insurance policy, it's really good. Not guaranteeing that they win the audit, but it's nice to know you can sleep well at night knowing that they would charge no additional charge to defend you against the IRS for the deferred sales trust portion. Okay, so that's that. Number two is myself, my business partner, financial advisor. No matter how and where the funds are invested, about 1.5% to 2%
Sure.
on an annual recurring basis. So if it was $1 million that hit the account, net of the closing cost, 15 to 20 grand.
Right. Right. Makes total sense. Cool. Well, sweet. I don't have any other questions top of mind. Is there a question that I should have asked but haven't asked right now?
I think the one was like for like the business professional, right?
Mhm.
I just like how can business professionals implement this to help their clients? And
Right.
I think the world is changing rapidly, especially COVID with technology, and it's challenging the value proposition of every single luxury realtor, financial advisor, business broker, commercial real estate broker, operator, right? Anyone who helps high net worth clients. They're asking, why are you charging all these fees for what I can maybe get on my own? Right.
Right.
And this is where the deferred sales trust is amazing because guess what? The most expensive thing is death and taxes, right? You're not getting out of them in the sense of you need to make sure you're managing your health and your finances, all those things, right? And the second part of this is the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet's happening right now, Sean. Like we call this the perfect storm. And it's actually a perfect storm on three fronts. And I'll start on the first one, which is the demographics. So according to the American Bankers Association, this is really interesting. They did a survey. They found that there's about 17 to 20 trillion dollars that's going to pass from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. And this is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. And it's by the baby boomers, Sean, our parents, right? who are retiring. In fact, that same study found that there's about 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day, and there's about 77 million in the U.S. alone. They also did a study on the total net worth of America. Where's all this wealth at? Right. And they found that 50% of it's tied to what? Commercial real estate, high-end primary homes, and private equity, which is businesses. So that 50% is a lot of toilets, trash, liability, rent control, laws, regulation, and all of this wealth is accumulated. And guess where these people who are 65 want to do? Well, they want to retire. They want to trade the toilets, trash, and liability for time, travel, cocktails and time with grandkids. And, they want to enjoy their wealth. They don't want to be dealing with all of this stuff, generally speaking, right? So as a business professional, we literally have a once in maybe the history of the world opportunity to help them exit really well.
Yep.
Defer 30 to 50% in capital gains tax, or if Biden passes the proposal, 50 to 70%. Okay. So that they can create and preserve more wealth so you can grow your business. So when you're doing that kind of transformation for clients, Sean, guess where these fee discussions go? They're not a big discussion because you're giving so much value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem for business professionals is not their fees they're too high. The problem is they don't have enough value. Their offer is not attractive enough, meaning here's what I can offer you, Mr. Client, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client,
Right.
is this value of this transformation. So once people understand that, and you can go to experttaxsecrets.com to learn more about that. We have a coaching program to teach you how to use the deferred sales trust to grow your business. So that would be the last one. And then I'll give one more of the bonus is the estate tax. Okay. So one thing that people kind of miss sometimes when they're thinking capital gains tax is estate tax. So estate tax is for anyone who's above 22 million married, 12 million single. They're going to be hit with a 40% death or estate tax. It has nothing to do with capital gains tax or a stepped up basis. Those are set to expire to 12 and 6, likely 12 million married, 6 million single here in the next couple of years. Biden's even potentially proposing 7 million married, 3.5 million single. So that means where is your wealth for your clients and how are you helping them to get it outside of their taxable estate? So in the past, a lot of people do charitable plans, or they do these big life insurance policies, which can be fine, but those are more the blockbuster way of doing things. They're more transactional. The deferred sales trust, which is beautiful, in one deal and one day, in fact, the client in Colorado I was telling you about earlier, there were $25 million. All of it was inside of their taxable estate. They sold their apartment complex and they moved all $5 million outside of their taxable estate in one day without having to give it away to charity. Okay. So that is the power of the deferred sales trust for the estate planning solution as well.
I love it. Love it. Love the context. And thanks for breaking down the real math behind it. My audience really gets into that. So let's go ahead. We're going to move to the round where the audience gets to know who you really are.
Sure.
This is the rapid fire round. If you can, try to answer each question in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
I can do it. I'm ready.
All right. What is your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast. Oh man, there's so many great podcasts right now. Let's say right now, my favorite podcast right now is Run Like Clockwork, because I'm in the midst of rapid growth and scaling. And it's one that is helping me to practically get out of my own way and delegate and to empower my teammates and to grow the business.
That's awesome. Good advice. All right. What is a recent book you read and would recommend?
Recent book I read and would recommend. We'll do it Rhinoceros Success. I've read it 10 times, but I read it again last month. And I would recommend it because it teaches us to really charge at life, right? We have one, I believe, one shot at this life, right? And if you're charging it down, you won't regret it. So Rhinoceros Success, and it's really funny and fun.
That's awesome. I'll check it out. All right. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie, probably Gladiator or Braveheart, or a mixture of the both. I love freedom. I love
The fight for it. Yep.
Serving and giving. So I could watch those movies forever.
Good choices. All right. What is your favorite food?
Favorite food? It's Thai food. And I didn't realize that until I actually tried it, because I thought like curry would be like a weird flavor. And I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. So definitely Thai food.
Nice. All right. How many hours do you work per week?
Depending on the week. 50 to 60, sometimes 40. 40 to 60.
All right. Not bad. Kind of fluctuates. Yeah. All right. How many hours do you sleep each night?
Let's see. We get to bed by about 9:30. We're kind of old folks here with 5 kids, my wife and I. And I wake up at about 6. So
Okay. That's eight and a half,
yeah, that sounds good to me, right? I feel good.
right? That's
Yeah.
pretty good. Nice. All right. Here's a good one. You're a ex-college athlete. What's your workout regimen?
Yeah, so I want to plug TB12. So it's Tom Brady's book and his method of pliability. Like, oh my gosh, that's changed and helped my body. I thought I knew how to work out and be fit and stuff, and but it's helped my body as especially as I've aged. I'm getting old, man. I'm 38, Sean, and things are not working like they used to. I used to be able to dunk a basketball. Now it's like, good luck if I can touch the rim. So I mean, I'm a 6 foot white guy for those who are listening. So that was a big deal back in the day. So yeah, TB12. I'm going in. I'm doing. It's a foam roller. It vibrates, right? And I roll my muscles on that as I flex, and that provides the muscles to stimulate and to get warmed up and get the blood flowing, and it helps to get like a pre-workout before you work out. And then I work out. I play a little basketball. Actually, I did it this morning. I lifted some weights. I either do upper body or lower body, switching it out. I do about 5 days a week. And then here's an important thing. Right after the workout, I'm doing that foam rolling again. It's a vibrating foam rolling though. Okay. You can get it for like $50. Get it on Amazon. Just buy it today. Like it changed my life. I roll it for like 5-6 minutes a day. And it's like getting a full body massage, but without having to, show up to some random place in the dark and get someone to massage, you can just literally just roll in this foam roller yourself and be done in 5 or 6 minutes.
That sounds awesome. All right, last question here. If you could go back in time to give your younger self advice, what age would you visit and what would you say?
I think it would be 16, 16 to 18, right in that range. It's such a pivotal year. And I would teach, or I would encourage myself to learn to work harder on myself than I did on my basketball or my football or my grades, right? Or my social life, or all the things that you think are so important, which they are important, right? But I'd work harder on my leadership, my personal development. I'm a Christian, my spiritual walk, my health. Health was always pretty easy because I was in sports. My friends and my family were always pretty easy. They came pretty good. But I think the parts that I wasn't really introduced to was, personal development and leadership, as well as financial intelligence and cash flow. Although I was in the real estate world with my dad, it was more like construction.
Sure.
So I would have just learned that earlier. And the quotes by Jim Rohn, like, you learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Like, if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living, and that's fine. You work harder on yourself to make a fortune. And the idea is not to make a bunch of money, although that's really cool because you can help more people. But the idea is to become everything you're created to be.
Sure.
So I believe we be given certain gifts, and these gifts we give us to be a blessing to help to others. And it's not until we're using those gifts that we've been given, times maximizing the potential of those gifts, times impacting a lot of people, and I believe in a higher, having a higher purpose for life, that we equal fulfillment. Where most of us, where I missed it for sure, was I may have known a little bit about my strengths. I may or may not have been, really maximizing those strengths. I certainly wasn't necessarily impacting a lot of other people, right? And so you need to have each of those three. And then I believe, again, the bigger picture, encapsulate it with for me, it's faith, that there's a bigger purpose for our lives. And then that equals the fulfillment, right? So I really would have just stressed those few things to myself.
I've got a follow-up question. I love it. Love it all. Do you think 16-year-old or even 18-year-old you would be able to grasp that advice at that age? Me?
No,
not.
because I didn't do it, right? Or I don't know. Maybe
Right.
someone told me some of that stuff, but likely no, right? But at least it would have been like, go. And I had some amazing mentors and people in my life, right? So, even the parents being divorced, God provided good coaches, good youth pastors, good teachers, right? So a lot of people that poured into me. So, no, probably not, right? Because then I wouldn't have been, I didn't have to tell myself that, right?
Regardless, profound wisdom nonetheless. If just a fraction of that was absorbed, you could have been like, you know what, older me is right. There's something to that. So, well, no, this has been awesome. Really appreciate your advice. And this strategy is sound. My audience, I've got a lot of people here in the investment space and a lot of self-directed investors. And if they come upon a larger sum of money, they don't want to pay Uncle Sam or whatever tax they have to in their country. My customers are all over the world. They can certainly talk to you. So where can
Yeah,
the
deferred sales
audience?
trust real quick is only for U.S.
I figured.
stuff
Yep.
that's subject to U.S. capital gains tax. However, if you're not a U.S. citizen but you have assets that are subject to U.S. capital gains tax, then yeah, we absolutely can work with anyone
Awesome.
all around the world, just long as the asset is subject to U.S. capital gains tax.
Got it. Got it. Well, that's good to know. And speaking of, where can the audience reach you?
Yeah, they can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. They can search that on YouTube, iTunes. And if you're a business professional, you can go to experttaxsecrets.com. And yeah, you can get a free ebook, how to sell your real estate, business, or cryptocurrency smarter. And happy to help if you have $1 million more net proceed deal and gain with a free consultation call.
Nice. That's awesome, Brett. Well, thanks. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sean. My pleasure to be here.
We'll see ya. All right. Turn it off. Dude, great content. Love it. Similar path. I actually went to college as well, swimmer scholarship, about the same age, 38 as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, tax can really bite you. This has been great. Love it. I knew when I saw you, and I can't recall if I contacted you or you contacted me, but I'm like, yes, I need this and my audience needs this.
I love it, man. This is my passion, as you could tell. So appreciate it. And by the way, what exactly besides the podcast? Help me more what you do and what you're focused.
Yeah. So I have a fintech SaaS. It's a software that helps people all around the world manage their own investments. Yeah. Long story short, I wrote an algorithm about 5 years ago, started beating the stock market. Average returns are typically between 15 and 50%. And it's all based on value investing. So it's very simple, very boring businesses, but really financially sound businesses. So yeah, we've got it's a year old, about 2,500 customers around the globe.
Wow.
Yeah. And
send it to me, man. I'll check it out. I mean, what is it? Yeah, that sounds amazing.
I'll send you, because we're in a beta mode here, because we're completely revamping. The new platform is going live on July 1. Okay. Love your feedback. I'll send you an invite to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sweet. Maybe your customers might
come on the show and talk all about it. You know what I mean? Let's that sounds really fun.
Yeah, it's like you, man. It's a blessing to be doing what you love. It's taken a long time to get here, but it's worth it.
Cool. Well, come on and tell the whole story about how you got there, and that'd be
sure.
Great. And then stay in contact. Then, of course, we do webinars and educational events, right? So we can do a Zoom if you feel like this gets good traction on the audience, and then if you may or may not be a financial advisor, right? You just provide it for them, but there's a ways to monetize, helping to get referrals and stuff if you're open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just full disclosure, with a stock screener, which is what we're technically called, you don't need any certification. So no Series 7 or 65. We do not manage assets.
Got it.
People manage their own, but there are always people that are like, hey, do you know somebody who I just inherited 5 million. I don't want to invest it all on my own. Could I give it to somebody to help manage?
Exactly. Well, someone that you trust in your network.
Yeah, you've got a strategy. I can tell them, I not only have somebody that can help manage it, but how would you feel if you didn't have to pay taxes on it right now?
Exactly. You're speaking my language, brother. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I'll help Wilma send you an email, and then go ahead, or I'll send it to you and I'll CC Wilma. She'll help schedule you to get on my show. And then let's just see where we go from there, if that sounds good. And maybe I'll email you some stuff too. I'll put you on the drip so you can kind of learn about what I do, if that sounds good.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. Look at the spam folder. If you don't see it in about 10 minutes, add me to the safe sender list, because my system sometimes sends us to spam. Okay.
Sure. I know the drill.
All right, Sean. Thank you, brother. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brett. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.